Sponsored by Brilliant. Apple has tentatively agreed to settle the iPhone BatteryGate class action lawsuit in the US to the tune of $500 million. This follows a 25 million euro fine last month. So, how did all this go so wrong for Apple? And why? I'm Rene Ritchie, and this is Vector. Now, BatteryGate has always been complicated, far more complicated than something like AntennaGate. With AntennaGate on the iPhone 4, you put your finger on the bottom left of the band, bridging and detuning the antennas, and it would impede signal. Apple mitigating it by Steve Jobs offering out free bumpers, and fixed it in the Verizon iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S in future iPhone antennas for everyone. With BatteryGate, things started off weird and just got weirder. Back in late 2016, people started complaining about their iPhone 6 and 6S shutting down unexpectedly, and worse, having to be connected to power cables just to boot back up. Apple said it was only happening to a small percentage of customers, but at iPhone scale, even a small percentage is a lot of people. Especially in this case, because if the iPhone can't be rebooted without being plugged in, you risk hella inconveniencing those people, the ones out and about, away from their cables and outlets, not able to use their iPhones, especially in the case of an emergency. To figure out what was going on, Apple's engineers did something I still think is really clever. They added diagnostics into the next iOS update, collected all the shutdown data they could, and figured out exactly what was going wrong. And, as it turned out, it was the battery. If a particularly intensive task, like say a complex photo filter, caused a significant spike in processor demand, it also caused a spike in power draw. In most cases, that was fine. But if the battery health was bad, if it had been through an unusual amount of charge cycles, or damaged in some way, or exposed to a lot of heat, for example, it couldn't meet the power demand, and so it would brown out, shut down, just to protect itself. Once Apple's engineers understood what was happening, they injected a solution into the next iOS update. First, they added the ability for the iPhone to recover and reboot from a brownout without having to be plugged in again, pretty much eliminating the risk of anyone being left without a functioning iPhone. Second, they added a Mac-style service notice in settings to warn about poor battery health. Third, they expanded performance management, throttling, to prevent brownouts from occurring to begin with. Now, throttling has become something of a dirty, rage-inducing word online thanks to things like BatteryGate and a bug in the 2017 MacBook Pro. But it's also something that happens to pretty much every processor all the time, especially in the more constrained environments, and especially on phones. Power generates heat. Heat is bad for chips. Regulating power and heat takes the edge off that badness. Why wasn't the iPad affected? iPads have much bigger batteries that tended not to see as much abuse, and so could happily keep meeting those power demand spikes without issue. Why didn't this happen to other phones? I don't know that it didn't, but in general, other chips in other phones didn't used to be anywhere nearly as powerful. They mostly came from merchant silicon vendors that were content to let technology sit on the shelf for years to better recoup their R&D spend. Apple doesn't have profit and loss on chips. Apple makes its money on the whole device. So chips became a differentiator for Apple, and it was happy to let its silicon engineers run, race, sprint. Eventually, the other chip makers followed suit. But even then, some other phones had bigger batteries, which provided more of a buffer. But frankly, some of them were also throttled much harder at launch, maybe for the same reasons, but whitelisting things like benchmarks so people just couldn't tell. Not until they got caught, which was a whole different gate. Anyway, Apple's fix was to more carefully, conservatively manage performance, or to throttle harder in other words, to choose reliability over speed. They gave me and a bunch of other media outlets a statement about it back when the fix was pushed out as part of iOS 10.2.1 on February 23, 2017, saying they were seeing more than an 80% reduction in iPhone 6s and over a 70% reduction on iPhone 6 of devices unexpectedly shutting down. But now, looking back, we could obviously in hindsight, it was not. On December 9, 2017, TechFire on Reddit posted that, after their iPhone 6s was very slow for weeks, getting the battery changed brought it right back up to speed again. Now, remember when I said cause and effect on AntennaGate was at least direct? Touch antenna, kill antenna? This was not that. Most people don't see slowness and think, aha, battery. They think operating system. They think latest update, stuff like that. What was supposed to have happened was that only those power spikes that were shutting down iPhones were throttled down. That would have affected only the most demanding tasks, like complex photo filters, for only that small percentage of customers. Apple gave me and other outlets another statement saying exactly that, and that they thought it was working well enough that they were going to extend it to the iPhone 7 with iOS 11.2. Instead, though, it looked like a far wider range of tasks were being throttled and for a far, far greater percentage of people. My feeling, and I said this from pretty much the beginning of the gate, was that it would have been smarter for Apple to let iPhones keep on functioning as they always had, then, if and when they browned out, when they restarted, pop up a warning saying battery health was compromised. Please contact AppleCare, and a notice or consent button saying they were going to more aggressively manage performance until it was seen by AppleCare. Not only would that have saved Apple from the gate, it would have been a far better way to inform and empower customers from the gate. But that's just not how Apple traditionally rolls. So, as it so typically is, silence fills with conspiracy. That Apple was just slowing down phones to try and trick people into upgrading earlier. Built-in obsolescence. Money. But the conspiracy is actually very, very different and goes much, much deeper. Here, come closer. Apple doesn't just want people to buy a lot of iPhones. Apple wants there to be a lot of iPhones. That's why the build quality is so high, so they won't fall apart as fast. Why the processors are so powerful, so there'll be headroom enough not just to run this year's software, but software for the next 4 or 5 years. And why every few software updates are performance updates to make older phones run better so they'll last longer. And they want you to hand down, sell, or trade in your previous iPhone so it stays out in the world, totally still usable, so whoever is still using it keeps buying apps, subscribing to Apple Music or Arcade, TV Plus, whatever. It's why Apple very specifically doesn't say how many new iPhones they sell every year, not anymore, but how many total devices they have on the market. It's not about just replacing one phone with another, it's about growing the size of the platform. And any iPhone that ages out for any reason doesn't grow the size of that platform. The restart part of the update was great, but the notification about battery health just wasn't obvious, didn't stand out to anybody, so nobody knew or understood about it. So that when the change happened in power management, nobody understood or knew about that either. And by the end of 2017, Apple issued an apology for its handling of iPhone performance management, saying pretty much just that. Customers felt let down. Apple also announced deeply discounted battery replacements for anyone with an affected device, and that iOS would be updated to present much better visibility into battery health and the performance management system. In early 2018, Apple also added that the update would include a way to disable performance management entirely between brownouts if anyone really wanted to do that. The update went into beta on January 31st, 2018 and launched as part of iOS 11.3 on March 28th, 2018. In October of 2018, Apple added the iPhone 8 and iPhone 10 to the performance management system as part of the iOS 12.1 update, but said far fewer people may even notice thanks to advances in both the silicon and the performance management systems in general. In October of 2019, iPhone XS and XR were added as part of iOS 13.1. And I'd expect the iPhone 11 will be added in October of 2020 as part of iOS 14.1 or 2. And now, they've been fined 25 million euros in France and settled for $500 million in the US. Not necessarily for doing the wrong thing, they just did it in the wrong way, especially in terms of informing and educating their customers on what exactly was happening and why. And if you want to one day solve problems like this, or better yet, prevent them from ever happening, check out Brilliant's new Algorithm Fundamentals course. You start with simple drag and drop exercises to let you start thinking like a computer scientist about conditionals, loops, arrays, and how to put them all together into common algorithms for searching, for sorting. Brilliant is a problem-solving based website after all, and an app with a hands-on approach with over 60 interactive courses in math, science, and computer science. It puzzles you, surprises you, and expands your understanding of the modern world. And all of Brilliant's courses have storytelling, code writing, interactive challenges, and problems to solve. The best thing you can do in 2020 is invest in your STEM skills. So go to brilliant.org/vector and finish your day a little smarter every day. Thanks, Brilliant, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. So that's what happened with BatteryGate and why. Now, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Hit like if you do, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell gizmo so YouTube will actually tell you when new shows go live. Then hit up the comments. and let me know. Thanks for watching. See you next video.